I would now like to welcome Professor Pete Borriello to our virtual stage for the final session of the Ruma 2021 conference. Pete recently retired from his role as Chief Executive at the VMD, and I was privileged to attend his retirement lecture a couple of months ago, and he really has had an exceptional career. His role at the VMD has been a pivotal one in protecting public health, animal health, and the environment. Under his tenure, the VMD has been a key driver in the One Health challenge of mitigating the development of antibiotic resistance, alongside other stakeholders such as Ruma. Under his leadership, the usage of antibiotics by UK vets and farmers has decreased substantially, whilst measures to prevent disease, such as vaccination, have grown. He is now a trustee for the VMD's Safe Medicines for Animals through Regulatory Training, aka SMART programme charity. And this initiative provides expert training programs around the world to help build global capacity in responsible governance for the regulation, manufacture, distribution, and use of safe and effective veterinary medicines, with the associated benefits for the health and welfare of people, animals, and the environment. Peter joins us today to provide a look ahead to the challenges the UK faces in its bid to ensure responsible use of medicines and in response to AMR. Over to you, Peter.
Thank you. And I know there's a bit of a disconnect between the visuals and the sound, at least at my end. So apologies if it looks a bit like a dubbed foreign film. But I think the first thing to say is that when you come to the end of the day, when nearly everybody's been commenting on the challenges, it doesn't leave an awful lot to say. And I've been slowly crossing off everything on my list. I had one thing left, which was that whole messy area of food labelling and brand, but then that just then got picked up. But I will make some comments on future challenges, which I hope complement what's been said so far today, and maybe bring, hopefully, still a few original views or topics in. But before I do that, what I actually want to say is how incredibly encouraged I've been by today's conference. And maybe not for the reasons you would guess, which is the continual reduction in use, the continual switch away from critical antibiotics, so there's been no gaming, and the emergence of a decrease in resistance amongst veterinary target pathogens, as well as in indicator organisms, which is all good news. But the real reason I'm encouraged is by the very evident emergence of leaders. That is just tremendous, because to step up to the plate in your area of responsibility and to be a champion or a leader in an area where you won't get necessarily additional time off work to do it or additional remuneration, to help drive everything that's happening, takes a lot of effort. And for that, we should all applaud everybody who's taken a leadership role, because without that, none of this would be sustainable. So I'm hugely encouraged. And I'm even further encouraged by the evident understanding and appreciation of the fact that good quality data, depth and breadth, is critical for all the reasons we've heard about today. And it's probably with data where I'll make my first comment about future challenges, which is as much about making sure we don't miss the opportunity to exploit what we've achieved so far. And on the electronic medicine hubs, which are developing, following in the footsteps of the EMB pigs, which started off initially, of course, originally as just an antibiotic medicine hub. First thing I'd say is trying to avoid the use of the word benchmarking. It sounds too much like marking people's homework. It really is a proficiency scheme. At the moment, it's going to grow into more. There are many proficiency schemes around the world in all sorts of other disciplines, and they all have common standards around them about non-disclosure of personal data, about cell size minima, so nobody can work out and you get a deductive disclosure of the participant, etc., etc. So I think the more one can move to proficiency, benchmarking is a component of proficiency testing, but it's not the whole thing. And the move now to dealing with those who appear to be at the wrong end of that curve, it's not a bell-shaped curve at the moment, concentrating those areas and trying to bring those who appear to have better practice or even best practice to share their experiences with those who may be able to do better is really what proficiency scheme is all about. And I applaud that. Where it will grow, and we've already heard about building in other data, other medicines, the potential to link some of this now with productivity. And then, of course, with all of that, to improve market share or market penetration is critical to the growth of these schemes and these databases and data hubs. But one thing that leapt out at me on hearing the presentation on EMB was how eminently publishable that story is. But I haven't seen it in a peer-reviewed journal yet. Maybe some partnership, if needed, with one of the vet schools or some epidemiologists or wherever. But this stuff has to be out there. There's an old adage in research that it hasn't been published, it hasn't been done. If you reflect on that, you'll realize there's a lot of truth and depth to that statement. So I think there needs to be an awful lot more exploitation and raising awareness nationally and globally as to what has been achieved. Then there's the whole issue, which I know Scott mentioned, on integrated surveillance. Integrated surveillance is something that I've been pushing for a long time, and I think we've now got the capital investment from government and the FSA are going to take a lead on that as part of the National Action Plan, UK Action Plan. But it's a slightly different take to Scott's. Scott's was more about depth, which is equally important. Mine's more about breadth. It's what would be the shared vision for a single platform that has the ability to integrate with the right bioinformatics background, data from the environment, from food, from the Food Standards Agency, from the human side, and from the animal health side, in a way that provides added value, in a way that can be mined by others. What should the standards be? What should that vision be? And the timing is right. I know Codex are looking at integrated surveillance. Australia's got integrated surveillance platform as part of its National Action Plan. There really does need to be a discourse. And certainly, I know the FSA are pushing hard now for that shared vision to happen, at least to the UK level. And I very much look forward to that. Another area, I think, particularly now drawing on the VARS report, where there's an awful lot of susceptibility data for various pathogens and marker organisms, and now improved further with MIC, accurate MIC data for the first time for selected veterinary pathogens, is how we can make better use of that information to help inform prescribing guidelines and to see improved link between some of these surveillance data and prescribing guidelines. So that's the data package, in a way, where I see some challenges, because all of those opportunities are also challenges, trying to make them realizable. And I think everything we've achieved so far really has been in the stewardship area, where there's probably still only a little bit of headroom left for improved stewardship. There is some, to reduce use and improve the type of antibiotics that are used. But as everyone said, the next tranche of any improvement has to be at the front end of prevention. And that prevention of disease in general and infections in particular, and how one achieves that. And I think it's no secret from anybody that and it's true around the world, not just in the UK, there's not very good endemic disease data and associated costs, which I think is tragic. What isn't tragic is that people, DEFRA in particular, now leading on making a move to ensure such data are collected. Without that information, you can't make the business case, either at the cash level, the reduced productivity level, the food security level, or the environmental impact level on sustainable farming. Without that, you can't make the case for the investment, wherever that investment is meant to come from. And some of this is going to require investment, particularly some of the front end, potentially biosecurity issues. And the linkage between that then and local planning permission for what that might entail. So all of those things are dependent on good information and good data for endemic disease cost, particularly endemic infections, but endemic disease in general. The other area which I think is a challenge and that we haven't done best so far is that once we realize and recognize all of those things, what is the best practice to prevent the disease or curtail it when it arises, or to minimize it? We've heard a lot about vaccines. We've also heard about improved breeding, which I don't think has been mentioned, but we've heard about improved feed, quality of feed, the overall husbandry. There's a whole range of things there. But once best practice is identified, so firstly, what is best practice? Do we have the right systems to get all the funders together, A, to identify the right questions to pose, and then B, to commission the research, possibly jointly? And who should lead on that? I don't see enough of that. And then following that, once you've identified what best practice is or isn't, and you've got the evidence base for that, how do you ensure its adoption? Because otherwise it was a waste of time. So all of those things, I think, are challenges for the near future, ones that we should step into the breach and start to tackle in a coordinated way. Diagnostics has been not that often mentioned today. So that's another one I've managed to add to my little list of things to maybe add a bit of value to. And again, I think we've missed an opportunity because the sort of diagnostics that a vet needs in practice, say with a companion animal or in the field, and the sort of diagnostic the military need in the field, the sort of diagnostic that the low and middle income countries need, or the third sector when responding to an emergency, and first responders, and the GP and the GP practice. The common elements of that are common, which would help to reduce the indicative cost of producing such diagnostics. And the right questions, what would be the simplest, rapid, robust diagnostic, which has minimum impact in the environment when you get rid of it, once you've used it? It might be something as simple, is this a bacterial infection or not? Nothing else. Or is this a bacterial infection? And if yes, is it gram-positive or negative? It doesn't actually have to be fancy necessarily. So I think there's opportunity there for the diagnostics industry and the whole of Ruma and all other stakeholders to have some sort of dialogue, and then maybe others to be involved in that who should have shared interests. Of course, the industry will be increasingly regulated, and the users of the medicines will be increasingly regulated, because that's the direction to travel, particularly for the environment and environmental impact. And I think that is an area that's going to cause some problems, both at the production of medicines end as well as the use end. And then we mustn't forget, when we're talking about medicines in general, what about biocides? They don't necessarily go into the animal, they go into the environment. So the regulator there is not a medicines agency. And we did hear a little bit of discussion, I think mainly in that last session, about what's the role of the regulator. We really don't want a regulator. I pushed back a little on that. I think what you were saying is we don't need new regulations, which is not quite the same thing. A regulator or a government department can and should also use its convening power to bring people to the table and present those challenges and to help foster and or, where necessary, help fund the discussions that need to happen and some of the first steps that need to happen. So convening power and leadership, particularly in the early stages of some of the engagement, can be quite critical. I think the last thing I'd say is maybe flag some things up which might help add to the discussion, which I think follows this brief presentation from me. One is that, particularly on the companion animal side, anti-vaxxers. That whole anti-vaccine thing, it's already spilled over, particularly in the area of dog vaccines. It's not going to go down, it will only go up. People will start to target those sorts of things. So I think that's something to keep an eye on and to be preparing the ground against that. Particularly as most vaccines in the animal field are the equivalent to childhood vaccination in humans. And I think that issue needs to be made much clearer, including on the livestock side. There will be increasing pressure not to have animal use in batch testing and quality control, which could impact in certain vaccines. So there needs to be more research into alternatives. And again, occasionally environment agencies or other bodies make regulations to which the medicines regulators apply, let alone sometimes the medicine manufacturers and producers, and it's easy to get caught off guard there. And my last comment is on the food labelling and food brand issue, because it is so critical. And I was hugely relieved to hear the comments that were made about not having packages full of nothing but labels. Particularly, it's not that long ago, I saw a discussion about labelling, which was really going down the wrong route. And it wasn't just about every proficiency scheme wanting its label on there. It was also every nation of the UK wanting to say it had come from that country of the UK, not necessarily from another country in the UK. So it was going to get exponentially multiplied up as to a labelling frenzy. I think the issue of brand and what will be the brand label, I suppose, is the big question. That if people then hit on it, or through advertising and journalism and everything else, understand this label means the following. We care a lot about the quality of what's produced that goes into your bodies and its impact on the environment, as well as caring about the well-being of the animals that are part of that products of animal origin food chain. Whatever that is, but what would that brand be? Is it a Union Jack? I mean, it's a separate discussion. But again, that's a critical one for the near future. So with those comments, I hope I've added some value to what's been discussed today. I hope I've thrown up a few issues that might form part of any further discussion and Q&A. And it remains just to say a huge thank you for the A, opportunity to listen in today, and B, for the opportunity to say a few words at the end. Thank you.